Women don't love you. They love what you represent. Power, security, status, a shield against the chaos of life. And the moment you lose that, you become disposable. That's not red pill. That's not misogyny. That's Friedrich Nietzsche, the godfather of uncomfortable truths. He wasn't warning you about women. He was warning you about your delusion. You think she loves you for your soul? She loves what your soul can give her. And when it no longer gives her what she wants, attention, protection, emotional highs, she'll move on and call it growth. You'll call it betrayal. But it was never betrayal. It was the game. And you never learned the rules. Nietzsche did. And he tried to warn you. But no one listened. And now that truth is back. You think you're choosing your partners. You're not. You think you're falling in love based on connection. You're not. You think your relationship struggles are unique to you. They're not. You're following biological programming that doesn't care about your happiness. You're acting out childhood wounds you don't even remember. You're chasing fairy tales sold to you by a culture that profits from your emotional desperation. And the worst part? The more desperately you chase love, the less likely you are to find it. This isn't opinion. This is reality. And once you understand it, everything changes. Society tells you that love should be unconditional. That's garbage. Real love has very specific conditions, most importantly, self-respect. Society tells you soulmates complete each other. More garbage. The moment you need someone to complete you is the moment you've already lost. From the day you're born, you're bombarded with lies about love. Disney princesses find their perfect match. Hollywood rom-coms show troubled men saved by the love of a good woman. Pop songs promise eternal devotion. And you eat it up because the alternative, that love isn't actually the answer to your existential emptiness, terrifies you. But here's what no one tells you. Those love stories aren't selling love. They're selling emotional dependency disguised as romance. They're selling the idea that your wholeness depends on another person's validation. They're selling you the most addictive drug on the planet, the temporary relief from facing yourself. Your brain on romantic love looks exactly like your brain on cocaine. That's not poetic metaphor, that's neuroscience. The same dopamine pathways activate. The same obsessive thought patterns emerge. The same withdrawal symptoms occur when it's taken away. You're not falling in love. You're getting high. And like any addict, you'll do almost anything to maintain that high, including lying to yourself about what's actually happening. Let's get brutally honest about what's really going on when you fall in love. First, your subconscious scans for familiar emotional patterns. If your father was emotionally unavailable, you'll be drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. If your mother was overly critical, you'll find yourself attracted to people who subtly undermine you. Your conscious mind calls this chemistry. Your unconscious mind calls it attempting to resolve childhood trauma through repetition. Second, your body responds to evolutionary imperatives that have nothing to do with your happiness. Men are visually triggered by signs of fertility and health. Women are drawn to signs of resource acquisition and protection. Your genes don't care if you're fulfilled, they care if you reproduce. Third, you project all your unfulfilled needs and fantasies onto this new person. You don't see them, you see the solution to your emptiness. You see the end to your loneliness. You see validation of your worth. This isn't love. This is using another human being as emotional morphine. And when the high wears off, as it inevitably does, you blame them for changing. But they didn't change. Your projection collapsed. Reality intruded. And now you're face to face with an actual human being instead of the emotional salvation you thought you found. This is why almost half of marriages end in divorce. This is why happily ever after is a fantasy that crashes against the rocks of reality. This is why the same person who once seemed like your soulmate eventually feels like a stranger sharing your bed. But no one wants to hear this truth. It's easier to blame your ex for changing than to admit you never really saw them in the first place. It's easier to blame dating apps or hookup culture than to acknowledge that you're using relationships to escape yourself. It's easier to keep chasing the next romantic high than to do the excruciating work of becoming emotionally self-sufficient. Nietzsche saw this clearly over a century ago. He understood that our romantic ideals were just another form of escapism, another way to avoid confronting our fundamental aloneness. He knew that we use love as a drug to numb the existential pain of being human. And this is where the power dynamics enter the picture, the part that makes everyone most uncomfortable. In any relationship, one person always needs it more than the other, and the person who needs it less has the power. This isn't malicious. It's a psychological reality. When you need someone's validation and presence more than they need yours, you'll compromise more, tolerate more, sacrifice more to maintain the connection. Throughout history, women had to master this dynamic. Denied institutional power, they developed relational power instead. They learned to read emotional cues with frightening accuracy. They learned to anticipate needs before they were expressed. They learned to influence without appearing to control, not because they're manipulative by nature, because they had to survive in a world that gave them no other options. Meanwhile, men were conditioned to suppress emotion, to equate vulnerability with weakness, to seek validation through achievement rather than connection. Yet paradoxically, many became emotionally dependent on women for the very emotional nourishment they were taught to devalue. This created the perfect storm. Men who desperately need emotional support but can't ask for it directly, and women who provide that support while maintaining the appearance that men are autonomous. And this dance continues today, even as gender roles evolve. The masks have changed, but the underlying dynamic persists. When a woman says, "I'm fine," but clearly isn't, she's not being mysteriously difficult. She's navigating a world where direct emotional confrontation has historically been dangerous for her. When a man can't articulate his feelings, he's not emotionally stunted. He's navigating a culture that punished male vulnerability. These patterns aren't personal failings. They're adaptations to a broken system. But recognizing them is the first step toward creating something better. Think about your last relationship that imploded. The one where you were completely blindsided. The one where they suddenly changed or weren't who you thought they were. I guarantee you missed every red flag because you were too busy projecting your fantasy onto them. While you were imagining your future together, they were showing you exactly who they were. But you weren't looking at them. You were looking at the solution to your loneliness. You were so desperate to believe that this time would be different that you filtered out anything that contradicted your fantasy. That's not love. That's emotional starvation making you hallucinate a feast. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The reason you keep choosing the wrong partners isn't bad luck. It's because your unconscious is deliberately seeking out people who will recreate your childhood wounds. If you grew up with conditional love, you'll be drawn to partners who withhold affection. If you grew up with chaos, you'll be magnetized toward unstable relationships. If you grew up with emotional neglect, you'll find yourself attracted to people who can't meet your emotional needs. Your unconscious doesn't want happiness. It wants familiarity. It wants to replay the same emotional dynamics from childhood in a desperate attempt to finally get a different outcome. It's trying to heal the original wound by recreating it. This is why your dating history looks like a series of variations on the same person. Different faces, different names, same emotional pattern. And until you recognize this, you'll keep recycling the same relationship with different people, wondering why love always ends in disappointment. The dating apps aren't helping. They're just accelerating the cycle. Swipe, match, project fantasy, ignore red flags, crash into reality, blame, delete, reinstall, repeat. It's not dating. It's trauma reenactment at digital speed. Social media makes it worse. Everyone's posting highlights reels of false romantic bliss. Relationship goals becomes another performance metric you're failing to hit. You start to wonder what's wrong with you that your relationship doesn't look like the curated perfection you see online. What no one tells you is that the couples posting those perfect sunset beach photos with heart emojis are usually the ones fighting in the hotel room right after. The relationships most loudly displayed are often the most desperately maintained. And let's talk about that word everyone throws around without understanding: intimacy. Real intimacy isn't romantic dinners and passionate sex. That's easy. Real intimacy is having someone see your ugliest parts, your jealousy, your insecurity, your pettiness, your fear, and not run away. Real intimacy is showing someone the darkest corners of your psyche and having them say, "I see you and I'm still here." But that kind of intimacy terrifies most people, because it requires you to first acknowledge those ugly parts in yourself. It requires you to stop performing and start revealing. And in a culture that conditions us to curate our image at all costs, raw authenticity feels like emotional suicide. So instead, we settle for counterfeit intimacy. We share our bodies but guard our truths. We perform vulnerability instead of embodying it. We say, "I love you," when what we really mean is, "Please don't leave me alone with myself." And underneath it all is the fear that if someone truly saw us, not the curated version we present, but the complicated, contradictory mess we actually are, they would reject us. So we keep parts of ourselves hidden even from those closest to us. We fake orgasms. We swallow resentments. We hide financial struggles. We pretend to like their friends. We suppress aspects of our personality that might be too much. And then we wonder why we feel so exhausted and disconnected. This isn't love. This is mutual emotional counterfeiting. And when the inevitable breach occurs, when someone cheats or leaves, or simply stops trying, we act shocked, as if the foundation wasn't built on deception from the start. The most insidious lie about love is that it's supposed to feel good all the time. That comfort is the goal. That if it's right, it should be easy. Here's the truth. Real growth-oriented love is often profoundly uncomfortable. Because a real partner won't just validate your existing self, they'll challenge the parts of you that need challenging. They'll reflect back your blind spots. They'll disrupt your comfortable patterns. Not to hurt you, but because they refuse to settle for the smaller version of you. But most people don't want that. They want validation, not transformation. They want someone who makes them feel good about who they already are, not someone who pushes them to become more than they've been. They want comfort, not growth. And so they create relationships based on mutual validation of limitations. I won't call you on your bullshit if you don't call me on mine. An unspoken pact to remain comfortably stagnant together. This is hitting a nerve good. It means you're ready to wake up. Because there is another way to love, beyond projection, beyond dependency, beyond the romantic myths that keep us emotionally stunted. First, you must develop true emotional self-sufficiency. This doesn't mean not needing anyone. It means not making others responsible for your emotional stability. It means learning to validate yourself rather than seeking constant external validation. It means regulating your own emotions rather than expecting partners to manage your moods. Most people skate right past this crucial step. They go from relationship to relationship, never addressing the internal emptiness they're trying to fill. Then they wonder why the same patterns keep repeating. The brutal truth? Until you learn to be emotionally self-sufficient, you don't actually want an equal partnership. You want an emotional caretaker. You want someone to do for you what you haven't learned to do for yourself. Second, you must get radically honest, first with yourself, then with others. What are your actual patterns? What wounds are you trying to heal through romantic partners? What are you avoiding by focusing on relationships? This level of self-awareness is uncomfortable, but it's non-negotiable. Most people never develop this kind of emotional self-awareness. They stumble through relationship after relationship, never understanding the unconscious drivers behind their choices. They treat the symptoms, the breakups, the conflicts, the dissatisfaction without ever addressing the root cause. Third, you must develop genuine curiosity about your partner as a separate person with their own internal world, not as an extension of your needs and fantasies. This means asking questions that go beyond the surface. It means listening to understand rather than listening to respond. It means accepting that there will always be parts of them you cannot access or control. Most people never truly see their partners. They're too busy seeing their projection onto their partner. They don't fall in love with an actual human being, they fall in love with how that person makes them feel. And that's not love. That's emotional narcissism. Fourth, you must dismantle your expectations about how relationships should look. The script you've been handed, dating, exclusivity, marriage, kids, happily ever after, may not actually serve your growth or happiness. Create agreements that reflect your actual values rather than defaulting to social programming. Most people never question these scripts. They follow the relationship escalator automatically, dating, exclusivity, moving in, engagement, marriage, kids, without ever stopping to ask if each step actually aligns with their authentic desires and needs. Fifth, you must cultivate multiple sources of emotional nourishment. Deep friendships, community, meaningful work, creative expression, spiritual practice. No single relationship can or should meet all your needs for connection. Most people make their romantic partner their entire emotional ecosystem. They gradually isolate from friends, neglect their passions, and make their partner the center of their universe. Then they're shocked when the relationship collapses under this impossible weight. You must also recognize that love is a practice, not a feeling. The neurochemical high of new romance inevitably fades. What remains is the daily choice to see, respect, and support another person's full humanity, not because they complete you, but because you recognize their inherent worth. Most people chase the feeling and abandon the practice. When the intoxication of new love fades, typically around 6 to 18 months, they mistake the natural transition from passion to companionship as evidence that something is wrong. So they leave, seeking that high with someone new, and the cycle begins again. You must understand that conflict isn't failure. In fact, the capacity to navigate disagreement without demonizing each other is the hallmark of emotional maturity. Learning to say, "I see it differently," without making the other person wrong is a revolutionary act in a culture that models all-or-nothing thinking. Most people either avoid conflict entirely, leading to resentment and emotional distance, or engage in it destructively, leading to escalation and relationship damage. Very few have learned to use conflict as a tool for deeper understanding and connection. Finally, you must accept impermanence. Some relationships last a lifetime. Others serve their purpose and end. This doesn't diminish their value. Not all connections are meant to be forever, and the desperate attempt to make them permanent often destroys what made them beautiful in the first place. Most people cling to the fantasy of forever, even when a relationship has clearly run its course. They stay in dead connections out of fear, convenience, or stubbornness. They measure success by longevity rather than by depth, growth, or fulfillment. None of this is easy. All of it goes against our conditioning. But the reward is profound. The possibility of connection based on truth rather than illusion. Imagine relating to someone not as the solution to your emptiness, but as another complete human being you choose to build something with. Imagine the freedom of not needing someone to validate your worth. Imagine the honesty possible when you're not using the relationship to escape yourself. This is what Nietzsche was pointing toward, not the rejection of love, but its transformation. Not cynicism about connection, but the courage to build it on more honest foundations. The greatest paradox is this: only when you stop needing relationships to complete you do you become capable of genuine love. Only when you confront your fundamental aloneness can you truly connect with another person. This isn't comfortable, but it's real. And reality, however harsh, is ultimately more liberating than the most beautiful illusion. So here's your choice. Keep chasing the romantic high, keep repeating the same patterns, keep blaming others when the fantasy inevitably collapses. Or wake up, face yourself. Develop the emotional self-sufficiency that makes genuine connection possible. One path leads to momentary pleasure and inevitable pain. The other leads through discomfort to lasting fulfillment. One keeps you trapped in cycles of dependency and disappointment. The other offers the possibility of love without illusion. The choice is yours. But you can't say you weren't warned. Drop a comment below. Share this video if you know someone that needs to see this video. And subscribe for more. The red pill isn't easy to swallow. But on the other side is something better than fantasy. The possibility of genuine connection with yourself and others, built on the foundation of reality rather than escape.